questions. I'm taking notes, so there is no problem.
So I'm just, I
Oh,
want to
sorry,
say,
sorry,
just some of my observations, because very interesting paper, very interesting discourse you have presented, not only theoretically important, but also empirical, very significant. So cosmopolitanism today is a project. Ideally it is good, but empirically it is very, very difficult. It's because it's nothing but a majority-minority relations, a dominant and non-dominant subordinate relations. And what is happening today in India, particularly in urban context, and now even in rural context. Very recent, it is a project, basically adopted by the West, America particularly, and then by other, and because nation it is linked with the nation state. It is possible wherever a particular nation is there, ethnic nationalism, and more homogeneous community. But in America it is heterogeneous, in India is much more heterogeneous, historically. So cosmopolitanism, historical heterogeneous community is much more difficult. And thereby the problem, we also borrow the nation state. That is from the Western idea to our nation. But here basically it is a project. And that project is not, this is a problematic. Cosmopolitanism is not a problematic ideally. But whenever it is a project or policy or hidden agenda, that is a problematic. So another important thing to see, and just not here because there are so many other scholars to speak, very interestingly to see India. Why we India, whenever we suppose my anthropology, sociology, very often I have a paper on it. The growth of anthropology in India since its inception to pay that we are just celebrating 100 years of anthropology in India, calculating was 100 years of just cost. All over India we have celebrated 100 years of anthropology. So up to late 70s, anthropology was basically a British or American dominance. Thereafter, we started we call indigenization project or Indian project of anthropology. And whenever is indigenous or indigenization project of anthropology, that is once again a neo-colonial within the so-called free India. As because you see there is a very famous book by T.N. Udom, edited book. The last article is very interesting for a real true sociology in India. He raised very pertinent question in the name of Indian society. Suppose you very openly called Indian society. Is there in Indian society at all? In abstract sense is there. But in empirical sense there is no Indian society. Indian societies, and because we have tribes, we have the caste, we have communities, we have genders, everything. So it is not Indian society, it is a concept of, maybe it is Indian civilization which is converged. But Indian society is basically theoretically incorrect. Methodologically is also incorrect, but so many sociology books, right from our great scholars like even Srinivas. We have Indian village. What kind of village he reflected in the editorial? Even Machiavelli, Indian village, what kind of village they represented? Mostly basically the dominant caste villages. And even this Himalaya, Hindus of Himalaya, it doesn't mean only Himalaya is inhabited by Hindus, not Buddhists are there, Islams are there, tribals are there, but not as different. So one-sided, I think so. So that is why he raised the pertinent question. Still there is a gap in sociological understanding whenever we have indigenization project is there. Now another danger of indigenization project, what is this? Suppose you see very interestingly, you are focusing only on Brahminic model or Hindu model of indigenization because Giri, very famous, all of us we read his very theoretical frame, Hindu method of tribal, sorry, it is like this, backward Hindus. One last 6 months back there was a seminar on Srinivas. Some young scholar like them, they raised a pertinent question. Even to Srinivas itself, NK question. He raised the question about Hindu method of tribal absorption. It means you are modeling the Hindu tribal transformation in the caste frame. But Giri did same mistake, though they are antagonistic to each other in academic sense. Giri is a backward Hindus. Very interesting. And now the Sanskritization concept. It is also attacking nowadays because we are Sanskritizing or somebody called Brahminization, maybe the same model you are following, the dominant paradigm of Indian society. So this is the last question. So whenever we are coming to Sanskritization, then why a lot of so-called retribalization started? Actually, retribalization is linked with the Sanskritization. Why number of tribal groups is increasing day by day? In my student days, I used to memorize for my examination 427 tribal groups. Now my young student memorizes 625 diagrams. So there should be reduced because whenever national integration is speaking about, why it is so. It means wherever there, basically we are not either, sometimes we are much more Eurocentric, or sometimes we are much more, what you say, ethnocentric. And my last point has become a very interesting issue. Yesterday there was a very famous article by Prabhat Patnaik. He's the economist, very nice writing he did. In notions, the concept of nationalism, how it has changed. Nationalism, initially Indian context, is a colonial, anti-colonial. Why it was composite at the time of our freedom movement. Then it was integrative during nation building process. It was integrated. Now it is more a, what's a militant kind of nationalism. This is a typical theoretical discourse. I think this is more empirical reality that depends on how we theorize. Thank you very much. I am very much impressed with your lecture. Thank you.
So you answer the questions or should I take more questions?
I can take more questions
Yeah.
so that we have more time.
Wait, otherwise, there are various commonalities.
Sure.
So, how to solve the problem of Asian dialogues falling prey to rise of Asian narrative? So, where do we draw the line between Asian dialogues and rise of Asian narrative? That's number one. And number two, somewhere in your article you talk about theory as dance. Can you please explicate that, how theory can be seen as dance? Please.
Further questions, please?
I have some. I don't think these are questions. These are basically issues which in fact trouble me. Trouble me in a way that I am also following a similar kind of a journey as I was discussing with you. The first thing that I was finding out, your critique of Eurocentrism in the social sciences, particularly in countries like India. And you were at the same time talking with reference to the very point that one should be very careful that it should not also be ethnocentric at the same time. But I think this appears and this sounds probably paradoxical in a way that you are Eurocentric, criticizing something as Eurocentric, and at the same time you are not ethnocentric. I think this is problematic. That how could I be critical about social sciences saying that it is Eurocentric, and at the same time I am not looking back to my own things and putting it against that backdrop. And if I am looking back to my own thing and putting it against that backdrop, automatically it becomes Eurocentric. But if I look at the way you practice social sciences or sociology as such, it is not at all a critique of Eurocentric as such, but rather you talk more in terms of global sociology. So what I am trying to find out as a problematic, that your critique of Eurocentric, that too with a ladder of that it should not be ethnocentric, is it some way reflective of that global sociology that you are largely reflecting on? And if it is so, then why you are not clearly mentioning this, that Eurocentrism should be based on a global sociology prism? And automatically then ethnocentric part vanishes. That position hardly comes. I mean, in methodological and theoretical sense. That is one point that I found rather critical or rather problematic to digest. And another one is something like that you talked about comparison of comparisons. And at the same time you were talking about planetarity and the dialogic social science with Shraddha, respect and everything. I think comparison, whenever you talk about comparison, there is a center. And without a center, comparison can hardly get materialized. And if we are already having a center in the methodological position that we have to follow, then probably we are again falling in the same trap that we are trying to criticize. So that's the other point that I am trying to bring into your notice, and I would like to I would like to know how you reflect on this. I mean straight away that comparison of comparison is no way eradicating the problem of comparison per se, right? So comparison, if we are to criticize comparison or comparative method in social sciences, saying that it hardly opens up the scope of or that liberation that you are talking about, a kind of looking at the space and the way theorization to be made, I think at the very first moment, the method called comparison has to be kicked out. So that's what I am trying to bring in. So it's, even if you say realizing the thing comparison or comparisons, but still comparison, there is a kind of a spectre of comparison that remains already into the social sciences. And that hardly allows us scope to think in that liberative way that where your entire critique is located. That is the second issue. And third one I was thinking of, you were talking about how to imagine the region. And in that imagination, you hard press the questions of struggles and aspirations. And the struggles of dignity and the questions of aspiration. And that again I found a little bit problematic, because if the kind of imagination, the imagining of a region has to be centered on a kind of this sort of struggles of dignity and the struggle of aspiration, is it not automatically become sociocentric and self-centric? And you all the time talking about that social science, your last slide was on that social science has to come out of this grip of sociocentrism and self-centricism. And if we are to center our imagining of a region based on the questions of struggles of dignity and struggles of aspirations, so automatically we are giving space to those critical forms with which we are ultimately ending up saying that social science needs to come out of this. So are we really coming out of it if we are to imagine region out of the struggles? Where then the question of dignity, in a sense, Shraddha, it comes up. Where does then the scope of dialogue that remains? That is another point. Maybe I may be reading you differently, but these are the things that I found problematic. And final thing, that's a very small issue, but very provocative at the same time, that you even raised the question of kind of a new sort of a methodology that I also reminded about Puribrajaka's idea and Nirmal Kumar Bose. In anthropology, this tradition didn't get much stress, though Nirmal Kumar Bose did maintain this. And it was interesting to note that Nirmal Kumar Bose never had gone for extensive field studies.
Yeah, intensive also.
So what is very popular with M.N. Srinivas and that school of sociology and anthropology, that was not the case with him. That may be one of the reasons that he was an odd man here in the whole series of doing anthropology. So with this, your method of working or doing anthropology on food probably was one of that. But what I was thinking of, with that I can inspire my students. So I am talking more in practical and realistic terms. So if it has to be incorporated into the way methodologically we do practice our disciplines. So up to this I am very okay that doing sociology by food is, I think I can manage. But the point that Madam has pointed out, the imagination by food, how you could, I would say, kind of make it clear so that one can draw very easily and go and executing it. Because the way you put it, I'm drawing it from other so-called, not so-called, the relevant figures, relevant figures like the names that we have put. So if that is the way, if we are to inculcate this, food imagination, or rather, what was the term? Food meditation. Then I think that is very problematic for me at least to convey to my students that look, this is how we are to adopt a kind of an. If it is that way abstract, then how it is going to help us doing it in practical terms? So that's what is your suggestion on that? How to bring it at the ground level so that we can actually practice it, like doing anthropology by food and food meditation.
Actually, we want to practice it.
Yeah, I am very much overwhelmed by that. But I was that time only I was thinking, okay, how to do this.
When Master Saraswati established the last page, he was on that food meditation or so called.
And of course, there are many possibilities. We'll come to this. In the meantime, let us also hear some more thoughts. Maybe Professor Chowdhury, some more thoughts from you.
Quite overwhelmed. But I quite agree with one part, that's thinking on your own feet. This is practiced in some of the Western universities. In a way, it is also Western kind of thought, or Western model. To think on one's own feet. In Oxford University, the tutors, they regularly train the students, when they're in tutorial mostly, they say that first you have to think on your own feet. So that part I found very agreeable, but still that is Western model. I mean Western thought idea. Otherwise I have no questions as such.
And some thoughts from you, sir? And some thoughts from you?
I find it most amusing the overcomplication of a very simple concept of foot meditation. I have been traveling with Professor Giri, and it's very simple. Walk and be with the people. It's that simple. It's not philosophical. It's foot anthropology. It's being out there. It's that simple. I'm an American. I have been in India for 15 days, I think. I have seen all the way from Pondicherry to Shillong to Peiling to here. Every place is different, every culture, every language, every people, and that is foot meditation.
Can we link with sympathy, with empathy, with some extent anthropology now it is more interesting. Do field work not only with sympathy but also with empathy, by heart. Not to understand only mind but only heart.
Any other thought, please? So, yourself,
There are so many
Mani-
bright scholars we have now.
I hope I'm telling your name correctly, Priyanka? Am I
I
telling?
think, yeah. I think, of course, thank you for the lecture, definitely. And I think the questions have already been covered. So we would like to listen to you, especially on these methodology issues.
So first of all, thank you so much for putting together in our conversation.
Take your coffee at first.
Cold coffee now.
So it can move together.
Got the cold coffee now.
So beginning with this question,
On geopolitics, buffer state.
your question about buffer state. Yes, it is for example, it's a problem. But then how we can practice a different kind of coexistence. And therefore these buffer states and the responsibility for us, especially India in this context, is to be a breeze and not to utilize this vulnerability for its own interest. And so this is a challenge for India geopolitically. Because if India is complaining about Western geopolitical dominance, then India should not be a party to the production of it. And what it is leading to? Nothing, isn't it? We are losing the goodwill of people, and what happened with Nepal a few years ago, and it was so unnecessary, so cruel, and what did we gain from it? Nothing, the kind of goodwill we have. And that is the spirit of India, the idea of India versus that if anything, that with all difficulty, that India has been a journey with a sense of openness, with a sense of hospitality, with all its difficulties. But nonetheless, India is a testament to that. And therefore, our contemporary geopolitical thinkers and planners, they must have that memory of India and how we can be. And it is in that sense. And the related thought is that most of our foreign policy kind of makers, their own, there is a very interesting book I was asked to review on foreign policy experts, The Making of Indian Foreign Policy. Very interesting work. And then, therefore, if our foreign policy think tank, they are also educated into this kind of processes. But what is our international relations discourse? The only a few departments of international relations that we have, most of them they are geopolitically governed, isn't it? In JNU, of course, there is a Center for Comparative Political Theory in School of International Relations. But how can you have a project of international relations without at the same time much interest in cultural learning? And so then many things that, and of course your question, Devlina, about what is India. That's very important. And India is multiple. Therefore, India as an idea, India as a journey. And if we look at across time, think of, say, 10,000 years ago, what was India? And think of what India now. And in a similar way, think of India after 50 years. Do we ever think about it? Why can't we? We also need to think about it. How just India would be after 50 years. So it is in that sense that, if we look at that kind of, we see that how India has emerged through interactions, through different kind of difficult process, some facilitated process. And therefore, our idea of India needs to be realized through that kind of difficult journey of labor and learning. And today we are having, and that is related to this kind of contemporary, production of ignorance in a way. And our contemporary moment, because of a varieties of things, is a moment of celebrated ignorance, isn't it? And this celebrated ignorance is that because we have this smartphone, we are more wiser than our parents. It is as simple as that. Philosophically, as it turns out, sociologically also, that many of the contemporary Indian social scientists have a little memory. Why is that we are not reading the work of N.K. Bose, for example? Even Srinivas, are we really reading him? Because we are neither reading the contemporary nor the classical in that sense. So it is in that context. So how do we realize India? So one aspect of the footwork and foot meditation, that think of each one of us as part of our being as a student in a college and university, if also we are required to work across India. Think of it. Think of a related possible pedagogy. It is not just utopian in that sense. Think of it. Now, in Europe, as India is a diverse space, Europe is a diverse space, isn't it? But European Union, when it began, now one important project European Union initiated is a project of learning called Erasmus program, which required each of the students studying in whatever university you are to spending one semester in another university in another country. And this Erasmus project has contributed to the making of Europe, not just as the European Union as a transnational project, but European Union as a project of understanding, mutual understanding. And it is so significant that it was named after Erasmus. You know about Erasmus. His name is Erasmus van Notre Dame, Erasmus of Notre Dame. And in 2017, in one cold morning, I was in front of the statue of Erasmus in Notre Dame. Erasmus was traveling, and when he was traveling, he was also writing letters to many people, including the kings, and then he was trying to tell them, do not go to war. And he has a very interesting essay called Complaints of Peace. And he's writing, and this morning I I read a little message in a newspaper that where is peace in the chowkidars? And you know, that is. So, ask this question, where is peace in the Chowkidar? But Erasmus was talking about peace. He said that everywhere peace is crying. So therefore, this program named after Erasmus, but Erasmus was a constant traveler and he was writing letters, and this letter complains of peace. And he has also another very important essay called War Against the Turks. So when Vienna, Austro-Hungarian Empire was preparing war against the Turks, therefore, this Erasmus program. Now today, we are spending so much of cry and so much of blood is being spent, but how our imagination is so poor and sterile. Now, how we cannot imagine, for example, a program like, let us have a program where each of the Indian students today, how many of us, studying in Bengal, for example, have studied in another place except Delhi. Everybody comes to Delhi.
Another just in Hyderabad.
And then, of course, that in a small way, isn't it? Vinayak, helps a different kind of experience in JNU, Dhaba, you hear some Tamil songs. So therefore, let us create and have a program. Think of Swami Vivekananda, Pandita Ramabai, because bringing Vivekananda and Pandita Ramabai together is also a great challenge, And because our present Prime Minister, his name is Narendra, and the name of Swami Vivekananda was also Narendra. and our present Prime Minister, he wanted to be a monk in that state. But when he talks, but he does not remember the Narendra who was traveling. And while walking, he was spending time with the Sufis. And one of the story is that he was traveling in Rajasthan, and he met a Sufi and another, so-called low-caste person, and he was having a bidi. And Swami Vivekananda said, "You must give me your bidi. I would like to have a bidi from you." And then he said that I am untouchable. He said that therefore I want to have the bidi from you. So that kind of think of. Therefore, the idea of India is that today, so let us think of a new ways of realizing India, and each one of us, especially students, and if we can think of a program like this, let us at least envision a program like this, which would be a kind of footwork and a learning experience. And out of many issues, Professor Mandal, you have raised, thank you so much. And for example, N.K. Bose, Paribrajakar Diary, and which means that in N.K. Bose also, I think the Paribrajakar Diary got the award in Bangla literature. So what we find in great seekers like N.K. Bose is also a kind of border crossing, with anthropology, with literature, archaeology, but also with philosophy in that way. And his journey with Gandhi and his disagreement, So that kind of, especially philosophy, anthropology and literature, that we really need to kind of embody, especially literature. And once we do that, because as students in our mother language spaces, but do we read the literary work in our mother language spaces? Why can't we read also? If we read, and in fact, interestingly, that English literature has become a creative field, because most of the interesting English language scholars, they are reading the works written in our mother languages. Therefore, Gayatri Chakrabarti Spivak, she has not only translated Derrida, but she also has translated Maheshwar Chatterjee. And I think her creativity emerges from that kind of dialogue with the mother language space. And some other literature critics are also doing that. Similarly, if social scientists do that, read much of our language, literary work in our mother languages. But along with N.K. Bose, I'm also thinking about B.K. Roy Burman and his mode of doing anthropology and how multidimensional it was and how it was related to a sense of struggle. And therefore, this whole idea of rethinking the cosmopolitan And what is India? Of course, Indian society is simultaneously singular and plural. That way, and it is a problem of language. For example, the classical anthropological work like the Nuer. Now, is this very language, the Nuer, is singularizing the Nuer? In some way, it is doing that. Like Raymond Fur, we the Tico, what is that?
Ethiopia.
So therefore, in anthropology and sociology, there is unfortunate limitation of singularizing, which is a kind of, I would like to look at it as a part of the human limitation of use of any language at that level. But all the same time, there are pluralities. So therefore, how do we think about Indian society as a kind of a living plurality? And that is the challenge, and therefore we need to have more ethnographies and also theories with the living plural. And if we do that, for example, if our idea of Indian society grows not only from Srinivas's work of remembered village or religion and society among the groups, but if we had equally compelling work, say among the Muslims, among the Christians, and the tribal, so therefore that kind of a living plurality also needs to be engaged with social science and anthropology, which would then help us to have an idea of a Indian society as a living plurality. And of course, the indigenization movement suffers from the challenge of a limited kind of project. But that need not be today, especially the kind of discourses that have opened up the Dalit question and the feminist question and the kind of the living plural in that sense that that each of the regions is, I'm coming to the dignity struggle in the moment, that each of the region is struggling for dignity, and that dignity is in a way, it is not just antagonistic, it is kind of an antagonistic way of establishing friendship. Because I have been neglected so much, For example, if my language has not been neglected so much, then my assertion is not just antagonistic. My assertion is the starting point for a possible friendship. But I will elaborate it further. So then, your question, very important question about Asian dialogue and narratives of Asia, especially narratives of rise of Asia. And the narratives of rise of Asia, for example, China and India, that it is the kind of the dominant narrative, but that narrative is also deeply problematic. And that narrative also has a genealogy in a longer trajectory.